Good morning, everybody. My name is Craig. I work in MetaMask security, and this is really about one specific aspect, but MetaMask has been making a lot of investments in user safety and security. I'm lucky enough to be here today to talk about one specific piece. I'm going to try to get through this quick enough to have a couple questions, because this is today the very first time we've spoken publicly about this. We've only spoken privately for a little bit of feedback and input with a couple real close partners, but this will be the first time most anyone has heard anything about this. So what we have today, Sam Czi's son, he alluded to this, and this is just sort of a diagram of kind of what happens with the third parties, the pull requests that are going into this ETH phishing detect repo. It comes with lots of problems that he kind of outlined quickly. One of which he didn't mention is that MetaMask kind of becomes the arbiter of truth to decide what domains go out, and it's not always quite black and white. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But we have kind of a problem here where we spend a lot of time trying to figure out whether it should even go into ETH phishing detect or not. It's not even just an automation and a speed problem. Then, of course, on the back end, we have, I just kind of hand-wavy over some aspects here that is essentially kind of enriching and optimizing the data that goes out. We're blending in some things from some third parties that isn't even quite in an ETH phishing detect. There's a little bit of magic that happens there. It's not terribly important. And then, of course, the Cloudflare CDN that we're delivering this all out to users to protect them. So I just want to make sure that everybody kind of understands what we have today so we can talk about where we're going and where the benefits really are. So what we're building here, at first it may look a little bit similar, but the real difference here is what we're calling Menpo in the middle. Menpo is not just a repository. It's not just about domains. It's about a number of pieces of threat intelligence. We're starting with just domains so that we can prove it out. We can replace ETH phishing detect with something that's much more scalable, much more dynamic, and above all else, much faster at getting information from our security partners and third parties instead of pull requests where we don't even necessarily have to decide, but it goes into a database. I put just a few things here about malicious contracts and heuristics and more. We'll come forward with some more details about everything that Menpo is going to do in the future. But for now, I just want to kind of focus on the domain aspect, but know that there's a lot more to this. Similarly, we're going to have partners and third parties contributing, same as we do with ETH phishing detect. But we built this API first, so everything is meant to be put on the backside of tooling. So giving each one of our partners and their researchers and third parties their own perspective, because everybody has different tooling for how they're detecting malicious domains, malicious contract addresses, malicious whatever. And by having the sort of the intersection of all those different perspectives funneled into the same location, we can really, really easily see what's malicious and what's not, and really get the detection really close to as 100% as we can. So then, of course, MetaMask we have, and I'm just kind of some of the other investments that Consensus has made is just in the threat intelligence team, some of our own automations and detections, a user safety team. We'll also be feeding into Menpo as well. Everybody will essentially just sort of have their own accounts inside Menpo, so it's no longer just a flat list of domains, but instead they're actually your data that you supplied to the platform. So some of the key benefits. One, metadata, including attribution. So many of you in this room may not even realize how few people have been supplying the vast majority of information to ETH phishing detect. Sometimes it's somebody that doesn't contribute very much, but gives a really good piece of information. We want to make sure that everybody gets attribution. So that's a big thing to our partners and to us and to users as well, to see who's protecting them from these threats. Briefly mentioned before, the speed from detection to protection, the amount of time that it takes and the fact that it's pull requests through a repo, and just by nature, we can't get it out there as quickly as we'd like to. So by building an automated platform that's all API-based, that has direct integrations with our partners and with our researchers, we can get it out to users very, very quickly. The other thing is user customizable threat feeds. So when I've talked about replacing ETH phishing detect, we're kind of building what we're going to call like a default experience. So publishing the sum total of trusted partners and accounts. There'll be a default experience, but we can also allow more advanced users to get in and decide they want to follow and essentially blend in research and threat intelligence from other third parties or platforms that we maybe don't trust as much, or they can decide what they decide is malicious or not based on the customizable feeds. Another is the private sharing of sensitive threat intelligence. When it comes to command and control domains, when there's some very sensitive information when it's fresh, we don't necessarily want it published out to users in a clear text format just yet, but instead a platform that we can collaborate between partners and each other, and kind of send. And so it's got kind of role-based access control to where anybody can kind of say, hey, take a look at this. Do you see this? And it's a platform. You can just kind of publish it live directly on the platform. Simple to contribute. I mentioned that a little bit earlier. So with API first, of course, with a UI optionally, but API first I think is really the way to go, because everybody that's really advanced in this, most people anyway, it's fully automated anyway, how they're scanning and detecting and all that. So we want to make it as easy for you to integrate right on the end of your tooling directly in. Let's see. More than just domains. I wanted to have a feature list that kind of rolled out into the floor like a carpet. I just put malicious dApps as just a fun one, but we were even just this morning like almost speaking with Ohm and about all the different things, the pieces of threat intelligence that we can feed into the platform that can be fed into MetaMask indirectly through this hub. So I wanted to call out a couple things about some of the secret weapons that we don't really discuss. One of them I don't even really have to say, but everybody in this room understands the importance of this. So I've had 25 years in my career. I've worked for brands from which you've bought products and driven their products and such. Some of them have more security program than others. Some of them don't really understand the importance, but fortunately everyone in this room does. And I think most people in Web3 do. So we have that working for us. We don't have to fight with management to say why this is important. Everyone understands it. We're working together also because though there's some competitive nature to some aspects of it, we're all working together to make the space get better. And that's not something in the background I came from. That was very much not the way. When you had a piece of intel as secret, you kept it to yourself because that was important, and that's sort of your intellectual property. And you know, we want to respect that, of course, with attribution, and there's going to have to be money changing hands, but we're working together is the bottom line. And then we're constantly improving. So the pace at which we're addressing things in this is not anything I've ever seen in my career ever in the past. And so I love that very much. The biggest thing is, so we're working on a Q2 launch of a private, we're just going to invite a few partners kind of to work out some of the kinks and get it all working and hooked onto tooling. And we're going to run that in parallel with ETH Phishing Detect. There will be kind of a cutover to where when we start using this as the back end, and then we want everybody in this room and more to be contributing and helping by attesting to not only malicious, but we can also attest to good, not only domains, you mentioned domains, but you know, talking about the roadmap a little bit here, a set of information. So a domain, a registrar, a set of DNS records, things like that. This is what good looks like, and if it deviates. So you know, kind of a more depth to the platform as opposed to just flat lists of pieces of intelligence. And once we start getting all of those roped into the same database, we can start really carving out an exact picture of what is good and what is bad. So with that said, I hope I got through with enough time almost for a few questions, if anybody has any.
I was wondering, are you leveraging any of the kind of existing Web2 tooling around this, like OpenCTI, MISP, maybe Stix format, so that makes it easier to kind of interact with those entities?
It's almost like you're a plant and you ask that question, because yes, that's actually very important. And so yes, Stix, definitely. I'm familiar with MISP. MISP, in fact, I talked to Sam CZ's son. He spun up an instance, and I have experience with it as well. It's good for small teams implementations, but for like a large commercial, it just doesn't. It's not well maintained. But we do intend to, the taxi format that is for delivering of Stix format. For those of you familiar, it's just a threat intelligence standard file format and exchange format. So we do intend to build those interfaces. So if you want to run your own Stix or OpenCTI interface, that you can interface directly to. So it's not just our own proprietary API, but absolutely that's on the roadmap as well.
Hi, yeah. What about other wallets? Are they going to be able to tap into this, this aggregated store of Intel, or is this MetaMask only?
Yeah, a great question. So in the nature of helping everyone, we of course want to open this information available to everyone. We have to figure out just how we do that strategically with especially some of the sensitive pieces of information that get put in there. We still have to kind of work through that. This being the first public announcement, I expect those conversations to definitely follow immediately after. But yeah, this is not strictly just a locked-in MetaMask only solution.
Hey, I'd love if you could talk a little bit more around the contribution revenue. So we have a bunch of security researchers like full-time working, and that's something we're thinking a lot about in terms of like, well, I want to be paying them and making sure they're getting value for their time. How is MetaMask and yourself thinking about it with respect to this platform?
Yeah, so first off, I'm focused mostly on the technology. I am working with Ian. If you want to take the question, or definitely I would love to talk to anybody with this topic afterwards. Ian, if you want to take this one.
We haven't figured it out, but anybody who participates is going to be rewarded, and it's going to be amazing.
Thank you, Ian, for that. Love it.
You talked about sanitation earlier, but you said it was kind of hand wavy. You just had a reference to it. Can you talk a little bit about kind of how you have confidence in the data that you're aggregating? Because I'm sure everyone probably has a different approach to how they detect and.
Yes. So you're talking about if I were to go back to the slide here. The enrichment, optimization, and the cache assembly down here. The enrichment is really, we have a third-party list that gets merged in with ETH phishing detect is what that is. We've had asks to merge in more third-party lists, which is really kind of how we got into this thought. So it's essentially a list that frankly, we're paying for, and we merge that in with ETH phishing detect. We just bypass the public side because it's so many domains. And Sam CZ-Sun took kind of a different route to the same problem. How do I get my feed into what's ultimately delivered out to users? We have one extra list that was in there, but we have several more that we want to integrate. But instead of doing it in this kind of legacy way, that's why we're building the new platform that will make it much easier, with the whole intent and purpose being to merge from multiple sources.
Here's my question was slightly different. How do you know the data you're getting is good?
Well, I guess the same way we know any of the data is good in threat intelligence. We trust them, essentially. There's some implicit trust with some of the information that's gone out there. We verify what goes in, but at the end of the day, if one of those domains that they say should be allow listed or block listed changes, the content does change. This does happen. Things like that can happen. Nothing is 100% in threat intelligence, but we do the best we can, and so do they as a third party to validate it.
So I think we should expand on that.
Okay.
A little bit. Yep. We're going to talk a little bit more about this with what's been rolled out with on the confirmation side, but we started putting in a false positive feedback loop. That needs to expand a lot more, and then I think there's going to be a lot more around empowering users to set up their own trust net, their own sort of sources of trust, let's say, rather than us being the sort of arbiters of who to trust. Will maybe allow the users to start to decide who they should trust. It's a process, though.
Yeah, thank you for that second one. I kind of briefly mentioned earlier, but that's exactly on point. Is we don't want to be the arbiters of truth, and with the new platform, we don't have to be anymore.
So what happens if different sources of threat intelligence gives different results? Like one says yes, one says no.
Yep. So also not in these slides, but very much happening in the background. A few people of which we've discussed here. A reputation-based system, so a trust graph, so that you can choose who you trust, and there's some implicit and explicit trust networks. It's not going to be there for the MVP and not for the next several months even, but we are in parallel working. You may or may not be aware of the Snaps is working on a permissionless distribution. Karma 3's here. We're watching closely what they do, and we're working on a system to be something quite like that. In the meantime, what we want to do is just make sure and stage the correct architecture and infrastructure to be able to implement something like that away from the legacy, because we just simply can't do it with the way it is here in GitHub today. So we're getting all the right infrastructure in place and then moving towards a more permissionless system with a trust graph.